Hello and welcome to World Panorama, a show that keeps you updated with all the big international news stories. I'm Aishwarya with you. Let us start the program with this week's top stories. US President Donald Trump moves to de-escalate hostilities with Iran, signals no new US military strikes after Iranian missile barrage on Iraqi bases housing American military forces. After initially denying, Iran admits it accidentally shot down Ukrainian passenger jet. President Hassan Rouhani deeply regrets disastrous mistake. Crash of aircraft in Tehran killed all 176 people aboard. Fatalities from Australia bushfire increased to 27. Military ships, aircraft bring supplies. Evacuate residents. 1 billion animals estimated to have perished. Prime Minister Morrison calls for donations. And Pedro Sanchez confirmed as Spain's Prime Minister. Sanchez's Socialist Party forms coalition with the help of far-left Podemos party after 2 inconclusive elections last year. The biggest story this week saw heightened hostilities between US and Iran. On Wednesday, Iran fired several missiles on Iraqi bases housing American military forces to avenge the death of its military commander, Qassem Soleimani, resulting in fears of military confrontation. However, in the evening that day, US President Donald Trump signaled an ease in tensions as he addressed the nation, wherein he said that Iran appears to be standing down and there was no need for military action. He nonetheless vowed to maintain efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and imposed fresh sanctions against Iran. Huge numbers of black-clad mourners in Kerman in southeastern Iran, paying their final respects to Iranian military commander Qassem Soleimani in his hometown ahead of his burial. Soleimani was assassinated in a US drone strike in Iraq last week on the orders of President Donald Trump. The coffin was given a military band salute. Newly appointed leader of Iran's Quds Force, Brigadier General Ismail Ghani, joined the country's leaders at the funeral. The coffin was then carried into a crowd of thousands of mourners, resulting in a stampede, killing 50 and injuring 200 more on Tuesday.
America should know that my father's martyrdom has led to a greater awakening of the people consciousness on the resistance front, and it will bring about dark days for them.
Iran vowed severe revenge for the death of Soleimani and retaliated on Wednesday by firing missiles at air bases housing US forces in Iraq. It was the most direct assault by Iran on the US since the seizing of the US embassy in Tehran in 1979. A total of 16 missiles were launched. At least 11 of them struck air base in Al-Assad. 1 more hit the Erbil base. Iran's supreme leader described the missile attacks as a slap in the face for the US.
They were struck with such a slap last night. Military action like this is not sufficient. What is important is ending the corrupting presence of America in the region.
There were then fears of the conflict escalating, some even fearing a world war. However, Donald Trump, in his address to the nation on Wednesday, did not announce any military action, saying that Iran's attack had caused no casualties. In a nationally televised address from the White House, he announced a new round of punishing economic sanctions against the Iranian government, saying that US does not have to use military against Iran.
The fact that we have this great military and equipment, however, does not mean we have to use it. We do not want to use it. American strength, both military and economic, is the best deterrent.
The US also says it is ready to engage without preconditions in serious negotiations with Iran Following the countries at the United Nations, the US, while justified the killing of Iranian General Qassem Soleimani as an act of self-defense, added that it was ready to negotiate with Iran.
We want a future, and a great future at that, for Iran. It is a future the people of Iran deserve, one of prosperity at home and harmony with the nations of the world. And so today, I want to reiterate that the United States is ready to work toward and embrace people with all who seek it.
Meanwhile, in a symbolic blow to Donald Trump, the US House of Representatives on Thursday approved a largely symbolic resolution seeking to limit President Donald Trump's ability to make war on Iran. The measure passed the Democratic-run chamber 224 to 194, but faces an uphill climb in the Republican-held Senate. The efforts for de-escalation of tensions are underway. Neither the US nor Iran has declared plans for further military action. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Whenever there is an attack in the Middle East, oil prices surge as investors fear supply disruptions. Once it becomes clear that those disruptions are not materializing, traders calm down and so do oil prices. Life on the global markets returned to business as usual. It is a cycle that has been repeated several times over the last 12 months to varying degrees. And the same happened this week as tensions in the Middle East surged this week and Iran launched ballistic missiles on US air bases in Iraq. Situation in the Middle East shaky, with escalating tensions between US and Iran, saw global oil prices swinging from one end to the other. The price of oil spiked to more than $70 a barrel this week following the killing of Iranian General Qassem Soleimani in a US airstrike. In the immediate aftermath of the killing, Brent crude, the international oil benchmark, rose 3.5% to $60.58 a barrel. Markets received a further jolt after Tehran fired rockets at facilities in Iraq, which host US troops. Brent crude reacted by spiking to $71.75 in Asian trading. The last time Brent crude surpassed $70 a barrel was in the aftermath of a drone attack on oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, which the US blamed on Iran. Surging geopolitical tensions prompted global leaders and traders to call for calm.
Do we attack Iranian targets? Do we go after launch sites? Would we go after economic targets, such as their oil industry? Have to be careful there because a few months ago, the Iranians demonstrated they could do that to the Saudis. So I'm not sure we want to start an oil battle, which could result in higher gasoline prices in this country and elsewhere.
Markets were relieved on Wednesday as US President Donald Trump signaled tensions with Iran are easing, reducing fears of a deeper conflict between the two nations.
We suffered no casualties. All of our soldiers are safe, and only minimal damage was sustained at our military bases. Our great American forces are prepared for anything. Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world.
As a result, oil prices plunged on Wednesday, reversing the spike in overnight trading. US crude tumbled 4%, hitting session lows, briefly dipping below $60 a barrel after Trump's remarks.
Now I'm pretty sure, feeling it's over. We will back to the point before Soleimani assassination, in my opinion, that geopolitical risks is not going very far, especially this year. This year we have an election year. United States will not be very aggressive in the upcoming days, and what happened will be settled at least for 2021. In my opinion. So this year, if nothing major happen, could be a very good year.
But even without the spikes, the price of oil has steadily increased over the last 6 months as Iran and the US attacked each other's interests and allies in the region. And that has analysts in Asia worried. The region is home to some of the world's biggest importers of oil supply, including India, China, South Korea and Japan. China is world's biggest oil importer, the US second, and India is third. But India is far more dependent on oil imports for domestic consumption than China is. A spike in oil prices could also deal a blow to the world economy, which is already struggling from weak manufacturing activity. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Even as the entire world's attention drew towards Iran's retaliatory action on Wednesday at 2 military bases in Iraq, that day itself, just few hours later in Tehran, there was a plane crash. Ukraine International Airlines Boeing 37 plane to Kiev had 167 passengers and 9 Ukrainian crew on board, all of whom died. After days of rejecting Western intelligence reports that pointed to Tehran being responsible, Iran on Saturday admitted that its military unintentionally shot down the jetliner. It was followed by an apology from Iran's president.
Boeing 737-800 Ukraine International Airlines plane crashed shortly after taking off from Tehran's Imam Khomeini International Airport on Wednesday morning, killing all 167 passengers and 9 crew members. It was traveling to Kiev. As the plane crashed, it scattered debris across farmland that quickly became engulfed in flames.
I was on my way to work when I heard the explosion. I ran quickly to the scene, where I saw the plane body had been torn apart and the bodies of the dead passengers were all around.
The crash of the American-manufactured plane came at a time of high tensions between Iran and the US. Iran has said it will not hand over the black box flight recorders recovered to the manufacturer Boeing or to the United States. Under global aviation rules, Iran has the right to lead the investigation. But manufacturers are typically involved. However, Iran's foreign ministry has invited Boeing to take part in the official inquiry into the crash. The Ukrainian airline involved in the crash says the plane was one of its best. The airline has suspended all of its flights to Iran.
В двух словах по самолету. Самолет 16-го года выпуска, середины.
The plane that crashed was made in the middle of 2016. We have received it straight from the Boeing plant. It was not used anywhere before us. It did not have any technical glitch or problems. It had been routinely serviced. The last time on January 6, there was no sign that anything was wrong.
От экипажа ни по прилету в Тегеран, ни перед вылетом никаких замечаний не было.
Iran says that its civil aviation organization will investigate the accident and Ukraine will also be involved. Ukraine's president declared on Thursday a day of national mourning. He appealed to Iran to step up cooperation in investigating the crash.
Розслідування авіакатастрофи здійснить.
The priority for the Ukraine is to identify the causes of the plane crash. A thorough and independent investigation will be conducted in accordance with international law. Investigation of the plane crash will be provided by a commission appointed by the Civil Aviation Authority of Iran.
Розслідувань авіаційних подій.
Apart from Iranians, the majority of passengers on board the plane were from Canada. The victims were remembered in a vigil organized at the University of Toronto. The US and Canada, citing intelligence, said that they believed Iran had shot down the plane with a missile, possibly accidentally. Iran previously rejected suggestions that one of its missiles brought down the plane, but on Saturday, as pressure grew, Iran's military admitted that it unintentionally shot down the Ukrainian passenger jet. It said it was a human error after the plane flew close to a sensitive site belonging to Iran's Revolutionary Guards. In a statement posted on social media, Iranian President Qassem Soleimani wrote that the country deeply regrets this disastrous mistake.
The evidence indicates that the plane was shot down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile. This may well have been unintentional. This new information reinforces the need for a thorough investigation into this matter. Canada is working with its allies to ensure that a thorough and credible investigation is conducted to determine the causes of this fatal crash.
While civilian air travel is considered to be very safe, there is a long history of civilian aircraft being accidentally shot down in times of conflict. In fact, both Ukraine and Iran have their own tragic histories of civilian aircraft being shot down during geopolitical conflicts. In July 2014, Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 was shot down in Ukraine's Donetsk region by Russian separatists, and in 1998, 290 people were killed when a US ship shot down Iran Air Flight 655. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Time for a short break now, and after the break we will tell you about bushfires in Australia that have claimed 27 lives. The crisis has also taken a vast toll on wildlife. Firefighters from the US, Canada and New Zealand have been flown in to assist fatigued crews. All the details coming up ahead. Stay tuned. Welcome back after the break. At least 27 people have been killed as the bushfires have burned more than 18 million acres in Australia, making it one of the country's worst bushfire seasons on record. Bushfires are an annual occurrence on the continent, but drought conditions and unprecedented heat have intensified the fires and drawn global attention. Thousands have been forced to flee their homes in the country's southeastern region, and the destruction to the country's biodiversity is harder to fathom. An estimated 1 billion animals have been lost, and scientists fear long-term damage to many sensitive ecosystems as well.
Emergency workers feeding water to an injured koala following a bushfire on Kangaroo Island. The fire season in Australia is far from over, and already it is shaping up to be one of the most intense in the country's history. More than 18 million acres in Australia have been burnt in bushfires. An estimated 1 billion animals are believed to have perished. Some will likely die later due to the destruction of their food and shelter.
I'm guessing well over 50% of our koala population's gone. Glossy black cockatoos, the habitat's gone. The Kangaroo Island dunnart, the habitat where they were only found, that's wiped out.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison called up some 3,000 military reservists on 4th of January to help deal with the disaster. Military ships and aircraft are bringing supplies to towns ravaged by the fires and to evacuate residents who were cut off by the flames.
I've got my family, my cousins, my daughter, my dogs. I think with everybody going on the road, it's just a bit eerie.
Hundreds of homes have been destroyed. This week brought some relief with slightly cooler temperatures and some rain, but officials have warned that the country will be under threat from fires for months.
We've seen record-breaking temperatures. We've got a record drought situation with 100% of the state drought affected. That means the landscape is extremely dry. The vegetation, the fuel, is highly flammable. Fires are starting very easily and they're spreading very, very quickly and proving to be very dangerous and difficult to contain.
The smoke from the blazes in the southeast of the country is visible from space, and it is spreading so far that it is causing haze in New Zealand, more than 1,000 miles away. On Wednesday, Prime Minister Scott Morrison visited fire-devastated Kangaroo Island and called for donations.
There have been many calls of support. The Polish Prime Minister last night, the Japanese Prime Minister, the European Council President, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. It was a long list of calls that were made last night, the President of Sri Lanka, and the support that Australians are receiving from around the world is just very heartwarming, and we thank them for that.
Morrison has faced criticism for his response to the crisis and his stance on climate change. He has argued that there is no direct link between Australia's greenhouse gas emissions and the severity of the fires.
I think climate change and also somehow the poorly coordinated government's response to the emergency have this really made this situation even worse. On the climate change side, the year 2019 is already recognized as the hottest and driest year in Australia's recent history.
While climate change claims are being challenged, desperate scenes are visible across Australia. Human beings and animals fleeing their homes, habitats being destroyed, large swathes of scorched earth, and orange smoke-filled skies. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And here is a look at some more international news stories in Global Buzz. British Parliament has cleared Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. British MPs backed Johnson's Brexit withdrawal agreement bill by a majority of 99, clearing the way for the UK to leave the European Union with an exit deal on 31st of January. Parliamentarians voted 330 to 231 in favour of the bill, which implements an exit deal agreed with the EU last year. After 3 years of constitutional disruption, the decision means that fears of a no-deal exit are no more. China announced on Thursday that Vice Premier Liu He will travel to Washington next week to sign the Phase 1 deal with the United States aimed at de-escalating the trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Liu, China's top negotiator in the trade conflict, will be in the US capital from Monday to Wednesday. US President Donald Trump had announced last week that the two countries would sign the mini deal on 15th of January, but Beijing had yet to confirm the trip. Venezuela's political meltdown took its latest turn on Tuesday as opponents of President Nicolas Maduro stormed the country's parliament to reinstall Juan Guaido as their leader. This after the ruling Socialist Party on Sunday installed a rival parliamentary leadership. Troops loyal to Maduro had surrounded the National Assembly compound in Caracas to keep Guaido and his supporters out. But Guaido and his backers physically forced their way into the capital. Inside, Guaido was sworn in for a second term as Venezuela's caretaker leader. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, announced their plan to step back as senior members of Britain's royal family and will begin splitting their time between the UK and North America in 2020. In their statement on Wednesday, Harry and Meghan said that they made the decision after many months of reflection and internal discussions. The couple's announcement raises numerous questions over what their future royal roles will entail. The royal family are said to be hurt at the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's announcement. Socialist leader Pedro Sanchez has been confirmed as Spain's Prime Minister for the new legislature. He will now form a minority government in coalition with the far-left Podemos party. Abstentions by Catalan MPs played a critical role in the vote after Sanchez vowed to have talks over the future of Catalonia region. Sanchez secured parliamentary backing by a wafer-thin majority, ending a lengthy political stalemate. Spain's politics was unstable last year with two inconclusive elections in April and November.
Spain will be led by a coalition government for the first time in 80 years. Acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez on Tuesday narrowly won a confidence vote in Parliament. After nearly a year of caretaker governments, Sanchez won the simple majority he needed by 2 votes, 167 to 165, enabling him to govern in coalition with far-left Unidas Podemos party.
Votos emitidos 350.
Total votes 350, votes in favour of candidate 167, votes against 165, abstentions 18. Your Honours have achieved a favourable vote from a simple majority of the members of the chamber, the confidence bestowed on the candidate, Mr. Pedro Sanchez.
The vote ends the 9 months of political deadlock resulting from 2 inconclusive general elections last year. Sanchez's Socialist Workers' Party, which finished first in both elections but fell well short of a majority on each occasion, moved quickly to reach a governing pact with Unidas Podemos after the poll in November.
Te pido como presidente dos cosas.
Mr. Sanchez, I ask you 2 things as Prime Minister. First, to have the best tone in respect to those who are intolerant, agitators, and those who want to take Spain back to the past. Second, to be democratically firm.
It will be Spain's first coalition government since democracy was restored in 1978 after the Franco dictatorship. Addressing MPs before the vote, Sanchez said that such a coalition was the only option for Spain after 5 elections in recent years.
Puede obtener el respaldo suficiente para convertirse.
This coalition on its own, a first in the democratic history of our country, constitutes an effort to join wills. It's the only government option possible after 5 elections to general this year.
Key to Sanchez's tight victory was the abstention of the pro-independence Catalan Republican Left Party, which agreed to sit out of the vote. This after Sanchez vowed to find a solution to the political conflict that has dogged Spain since Catalonia's separatist regional government tried to secede in 2017. While a fragmented parliament makes the passage of legislation difficult, the new coalition plans to raise income taxes and reverse some labour reforms that were passed by the previous government. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabhati.
And finally, even as we in North India are feeling the chill as cold wave conditions prevail, take a look at the visuals of the annual Ice Festival in China that got underway this week. Hundreds of swimmers, including participants from Russia, Belarus and the United States, joined Chinese ice swimming enthusiasts in Harbin to take part in the festival. Now, Harbin is one of the country's coldest cities where temperatures can plunge as low as -35 degrees Celsius. Local swimmers say that they start training from the summer in order to withstand the cold. Well, I am getting the chills even by looking at these swimmers. So enjoy the scenes as I take your leave. I'll see you next week in another edition of World Panorama. Bye for now.